Ich bin der Star.
The king is back. Aprilia Tuono V4 Factory. Guys, I gotta tell you, for me as a Tuono rider myself, some of you may know I have a 2016 Tuono Factory myself. It's coming home for me. It's home game for riding a motorcycle like this for me. It's always just amazing. What a unique and superb feeling it is to sit on a top-notch Aprilia Tuono. It's unbelievable how Aprilia managed to step up their game at a point where oftentimes I thought this was the pinnacle of hyper naked motorcycles. Well, Aprilia knows what they got. They have a beautiful system, they have a beautiful package, but that does not mean that you can't improve it step by step, generation by generation, again and again. And this is just what the feeling is on this motorcycle. I gotta be honest with you, the older Aprilia Tuono is already a superb motorcycle. I've got to tell that my Aprilia Tuono V4 has 10 to 15, I think more than 15 kilos shaved off. So carbon fiber rims, titanium screws, everything which you can imagine. Titanium exhaust, what you name it. But you do not feel the extra weight this bike has to be a drawback compared to the other one, because it does everything just better, and it is still like this, out of the box, standard ECU. Nothing is customized on this one. This is just from the box. Well, unfortunately for me, it is the better motorcycle. It is so much refined in many ways, and let me get into this. So first of all, the engine and the layout, it's been proven, it's super robust. Aprilia uses this layout or this engine for more than a decade. You just feel it's super refined, and they did not change too much on this side of the bike. It's still the same, or it feels similar with the power. It's never been under motorized. It's never been any lacking short, any power. It is just super refined, super perfect, no criticism whatsoever, just a robust engine. The improvements start mainly, I would say, on two factors, which is one, the chassis, and the suspension of the bike again. So for the suspension, you see it's got an underarm or a swing arm which goes below the tire axle, and this is just a concept which is race proven in MotoGP. It just improves the chassis feeling, the stability of the bike. This is also the sensation you get from the get-go. where the Aprilia Tuono has always been very stable, very refined on stability, it just improves it again another notch. It's incredible how stable the bike behaves, how easy it is to go fast with it, how easily it keeps the line, it follows the road. It's like a knife cutting through butter. Unbelievable what they did with this. The suspension on this bike is a semi-active suspension, so electronically adjusted. I've always said I'm a big fan of those. Others say they don't like it. I gotta tell you, it's not like I've been too compromised in my experience by having static suspensions only. So for me, it is still easy to adapt to a system like this. And more than that, I have less of the feeling that it somewhat interferes with anything, but having the feeling that it just works superb. And when you start to think why everything works so well, you notice that it's the suspension. Aprilia always had the philosophy to only implement electronic aids and electronic systems when they give you track performance, and but don't apply them when they are only comfort features. And you feel that with this bike, that the whole electronic suspension, the whole system is just so refined. You feel it when you brake, the front stiffens up. You feel it when you're on the throttle, the rear stiffens up, and that's especially something for racetrack riders, I would say. I have yet to ride this bike on a racetrack, but I can so much imagine that the last seconds which really the Aprilia Tuono or my older Tuono lacks with the static suspension is that sometimes, due to the high torque of the bike, you have the tendency for it to come up in the wheelie, and you try everything to compensate for that. You try with your body weight, but if you have a system which helps you to compensate that, which aids you to not having to do too much yourself, it's just shaving off seconds, and that would work, I can imagine, perfectly on this bike. And on the other hand, what this whole system gives you is a more robust motorcycle, also very much more robust for street riding. Let me get into that aspect for a second. So, in many ways, I always thought of the Aprilia Tuono V4 as the Swiss Army knife of sport motorcycle riding. A truly universal sport motorcycle which can be ridden in a sporty way in all conditions. That means road, racetrack, home turf, you name it. It's just superb and works everywhere. And when the older Tuono had a big bandwidth of being usable for commuting, usable on the roads, usable on the racetrack, not only usable on the racetrack but also competing with top-notch current superbikes, it's just unbelievable that this concept they had is not that they shifted the bandwidth to any degree, so saying making it more track oriented but less user friendly for the street, or making it more user friendly for the street but less track oriented. No, this bike, what they did is they expanded the bandwidth of what this bike is capable of. You feel it when you sit on the bike. I think that was also one of the more biggest criticism, I would say, for my or the earlier generation of Aprilia Tuonos, is that you feel it is a strong 1100cc motorcycle. It's aggressive, it's nervous, and it's not easy to ride for somebody who's not used to that. Or even for me, when I switch back to smaller cc motorcycles, it's always just more comfortable, you're more relaxed. It's just easier to use it in a daily manner or for touring purposes. And this one does it really better, in a way that the whole engine management, the whole mapping is just more refined, also for the lower revs, also for easy commuting. And I would truly say this is the bike you can take in the morning to the work, then in the noon go to city traffic, get your coffee, get your lunch, and in the evening go to your home racetrack and beat the lap record. This bike truly does it out of the box, as it is, stock, no modifications. It's just unbelievable how they do that. The other big factor on this bike are, of course, its electronics. Aprilia has always been top-notch when it comes to that. It has all the systems on board. Everything is configurable to the smallest detail. Everything is independently configurable from everything else. I can set up my suspension in touring mode. I can turn off the traction control, put ABS on the highest setting, turn off the stoppie control, turn off the wheelie control, or vice versa. I can switch it up the way I want it. And turning off electronic aids in Aprilia means turned off. Nothing interferes, nothing does anything. That's just something which is so unique to Aprilia and their approach to that many other motorcycle manufacturers just have pre-configured riding modes and everything changes up all the time. It interferes with all the electronic systems, and here you truly have the possibility to change it up the way you want it. Talking about the design of the bike, you can see the front, I think, looks beautiful. There's a beautiful new design language for Aprilia. We have the show-off lights turned on. Fun side fact, you have the opportunity to always turn off the main headlights and only have the show-off mode. It's very good for nighttime filming, joke aside. Nevertheless, in my personal subjective opinion, I think the last generation Tuono design language fits, in my opinion, a bit more to the bike. It was a bit more aggressive. Too often I have the feeling that I look at this motorcycle and I have to look at the details. Is it now the 660 or is it the V4? You never really know. I've said it in the video for the RS660. It's a big advantage for the mid-size motorcycles that they do look like the big ones, but kind of a drawback for the big ones that they look like the small ones. It's a subjective opinion. Anybody has to decide for themselves. The other criticism I would come to with this bike is that you feel again, emissions regulations are getting stronger. They're getting tougher, noise emissions got to get down, and don't get me wrong, when you get up the revs, when you're in the higher rev range where the bike is by law allowed to be louder, the exhaust flap opens, you hear it instantly, and you hear a beautiful, beautiful exhaust note from this motorcycle, and it still retains the very great V4 character. The, again, subjective problem for me is that in lower revs or just cruising along, it's very much tamed. Many of you will be very happy to do that, to have that on board. It's a bike you can really take by and not be the asshole who's loud in the neighborhood. You can cruise along, and once you're on your track or your home track, you can be loud. But on the other hand, what I really miss here compared to my older Tuono with a Euro 3, so 2 emissions regulation steps below, it just has this emotions which gives you goosebumps, which gives you just those emotions where the engine is brabbling, where you go off the throttle and you have the exhaust bumps and it goes like an angry animal. It's completely taken out with this concept. And I mean, what remains is still the power, it's still the capabilities of the bike, but it's kind of a shame, I would say, that you lose the concept, or you lose the feeling of what it means in a technical way, that this power is available, that what an engine really does mechanically and how things are working, and it's getting aggressive, and it's up there because it is what it is, and it's naturally does have these characteristics, and those are, in my opinion, beautiful, beautiful traits which unfortunately are taken out with this concept. Nevertheless, what I want to point out is you have a bike which unfortunately has to have a big ass exhaust system on, which has to have fuel tank filters, which has secondary air systems, all the stuff which is, in my opinion, dead weight. Nevertheless, it is, and probably if I would take both my Tuono in a race setup and this one stock as it is on a racetrack, I would be faster with this one, no doubt about it. But it leaves a bitter aftertaste to know that there are just components inside in this motorcycle which are kind of dead weight, to be honest, which do not make this bike ride better, but have to be there. And also the other big drawback is that with my Aprilia Tuono, the older ones, you had the opportunity to just take off the headlights, put on the race fairing, leave everything modified as it is, and go on a racetrack and have a perfectly fine race setup. With this bike, you just don't have the option anymore. You have to have all the emissions regulations things on, and you can't just switch back and forth for really race setup and street setup. You have to be more cautious of what you really want to do, and it's probably getting more impractical to switch around. It's just something you have to live with it. The last thing I want to really point out, the brake feeling of this bike is superb. I'm honestly not really sure how Aprilia does it. I've tested the Ducati Panigale V4S, for example, and it had even theoretically better brake calipers, but it just does not have this perfect brake feeling as this one has. It's out of the box, a brake system which is race ready, and this is just amazing to see, to feel how this bike really improves it step by step, year by year. Amazing. And I've talked to this many times, or whenever we talk about hypernaked bikes, we have to talk about all the others as well. And many of the criticism I had with the last generation Tuono, it's completely gone. When I say the king is back, I truly mean it. There are a few rivals, real rivals, who can really challenge Aprilia or the Tuono in its versatility. In many ways, it's caught up to its rivals. It's similarly accessible as the V4S is. It's unbeaten when it comes to real speed, track performance, sensation. It's just a weapon, and amazing what Aprilia again did with this bike. And if it goes on like this, the future looks very bright, and I'm so happy that this concept is well alive and beating virtually all the rivals. These are my impressions on the Aprilia Tuono V4 Factory. Check out our other videos. We tested the whole street lineup of Aprilia. Leave a comment if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. This is V4 Maniac. Cheers.